Yes, it's me. It's it's the witch's hat, of course. What are we celebrating today? We are celebrating the beginning of Halloween, and this weekend, children all over the world will be dressing up and having fun, and so today's subject is, what is today's subject? Witches, warlocks, and the Day of the Dead. We've had lots of questions, but actually we're going to keep the questions short. We're hoping for one or two live questions as well. So all of you who are live, I hope you're wearing your costumes as I am. I'm not sure how long I can keep this hat on for because it's already itching. But this is my practice hat because I'm going to be with my grandson Reese this weekend, and he's going as Batman and my daughter's going as Catwoman, and so I thought I would go as a nice good witch. So where actually then, before we get into the questions, still wearing the witch's hat, let's talk about this. Where actually does the word witch come from? What does it mean? Because so many people connect witches with bad things, and of course anybody who's seen the Wizard of Oz knows that that wicked witch of the north, she's good. I like her a lot, but she's a naughty witch. She's very, very wicked. And people do have strange ideas about witches and warlocks and magic and all of that stuff. So where does the name witch come from? And the name witch, it's I'm not sure even how to say this word, but it's spelled W-I-C-C-E, I think, Weiss or Weiss or something like that, and it's an old English word. Yes, it is an English word. It's from the old pagan times, and the word literally, now we use the word and we say witch, and what it actually translates into, what it really means is wise woman. So if somebody calls you a witch as opposed to an old hag, because I'm certainly not an old hag, but if somebody calls you a witch, they're actually saying something nice to you. They're actually referring to you as a very wise woman, full of wisdom and so on and so forth. And if you sort of go back through the ages and you look at all of those people who were burned at the stake and people who were, went on the ducking stool, I'm sure most of you know about the ducking stool. The ducking stool was that stool that they would sit you on. If you had been accused of being a witch, they would sit you on the ducking stool, and then they'd duck you in the river. And if you drowned, then you weren't a witch. You were not guilty. A lot of good it did you, and this is unfortunately true, but if you survived, of course you survived because you were a witch. And there are so many superstitions, and of course in the old days, back in the old days, people were very, very superstitious. The Day of the Dead, certainly in England, Halloween was that day of actually celebrating, honoring those who were dead. The churches used to celebrate their saints and honor their saints, and those of us who had loved ones who had died would celebrate them and remember them. So Halloween actually originally was sort of a time of remembrance and remembering to celebrate the dead, but of course, if you're going to walk through a graveyard at night, it does seem a bit spooky, and people do have superstitions, and people do get scared of ghosts. And so all of those superstitions and all of those weird things that people used to believe in, then they took a hold of it, the imagination. And this is why now we sort of celebrate and we consider witches to be perhaps not so good, not so nice, and we consider anything that's magical to be a bit odd or a bit strange. However, it has been my privilege and pleasure I had a client who was she called herself a white witch. And white witches are apparently good witches, and those that aren't white witches are maybe not such good witches. But again, as I've said, the word witch means wise woman, or wise man even, in fact. But white witches, and they're everywhere, and of course there are magicians, there are warlock societies. You can go anywhere and everywhere, you can find all of these things. Some of them are good and some of them are not so good. And white witches, I do know, because I have a little tiny bit of experience on this. White witches are those witches who in fact do good. Let's say their spells, or their, we would call them prayers perhaps, are for good, for healing. There are lots of people who are involved with herbs and herbalists, and people who make concoctions which, you know, go back again into, you know, the old English times, well, not just English times, but all over the world, where people would pick plants and heal. There would be healing plants. But again, in that superstitious era, and unfortunately promoted by the churches, promoted by religion and so on, were thought to be bad, were thought to be evil. And in fact, the churches of many religions, many different religions, use the idea of, you know, people going to somebody outside of the church for advice, for help, for healing. They used this idea of it being bad, that being evil, that people were talking to the devil, so that they could control their congregations, and control their congregations they did. In this much more enlightened age, we know better. We don't put anyone on the ducking stool anymore. And of course, we know that a couple of 100 years ago, I, with or without the hat, I would certainly have been one of those sort of, you know, torched or drowned, or whatever somebody might have considered my punishment to be, because, you know, I'm considered by many people as a witch, and I'm now going to take that as a super compliment. All right, so we've got some questions, and so let's go to Carolyn. First of all, we have Grey Eagle here, who's by my side. I'm not sure what he thinks of the witch's hat, but he's laughing, and he tells me he's wearing his headdress, and he's shaking his feathers at me even as we speak. He's sort of doing this, so we're having fun. And then we, of course, we have Carolyn, who is sitting to the far right of me, and she's the one who's, my hat is itching, and I might have to take it off before we finish this, but anyway, I'll keep it on for now. All right, Carolyn, so let's, dare we spooky stuff, dare we have our first question?
We'll start off with a live question from Dean.
All right,
you're gonna get a kick out of this.
Oh, all right, okay, Dean.
If a medium has a bit too much Halloween grog, would that affect how they perceive messages from people in spirit? No interference meant here.
Well, it's funny you should ask that question, Dean. Hello, and welcome back to our live show. All right, so it's funny you should mention that, because yesterday I made branded fruit ready for Christmas. Great recipe, lots of fruit, lots of sugar, lots of brandy, and you have to keep this this stuff for about a month to 6 weeks, where it sits and nicely ferments and does all sorts of good stuff. And then at the end of 6 weeks, it's great. It's just great. And the more aged it is, the better it tastes. Yes, you can find the recipe in my recipe book, which we are on the final stages of, I think. So that'll be in the recipe book. But I did have a spoonful of it this morning, even though it's not aged. I had to taste it. All good cooks have to taste it, and Carolyn had to taste. Are we now sloshed? I almost said unfortunately not. I don't really mean unfortunately not. I'm always very careful drinking anyway. I don't drink a great deal. I like a vodka tonic from time to time. I'm not a big wine drinker. Those days are gone for me. I don't know that it would make any difference, But at the same time, if you went to see a medium who you thought was in a cups, as we would say in England, drunk, groggy, whatever, my advice is get up, walk out, and please don't pay. Don't pay, don't pay, don't pay. That's my advice. So, I think that's the best I can do for you, darling. I'm just pulling this screen forward a bit because I want you to see my Halloween jacket, which is also glittery, glittery, glittery. So, all right, let's have, shall we have our next question?
Next question is from Aziz in the Middle East. He's a big fan of yours. You've spoke with him. Okay. He says, I have read from many sources that Halloween is a satanic holiday to enjoy their horrible satanic rituals. Do you think that's true, Rosemary?
Well, hello, Aziz, and thank you. Great question. Love this question. All right, so let's just talk just for a little bit about voodoo, for instance. Everybody thinks that voodoo is an evil art, a bad art, but actually voodoo, the same as the word witches means wise woman, that voodoo was actually originated for the good. But as with everything, people can use it for bad stuff too. So as with everything, there are people who worship Satan. And of course, they would, if they want to, they can use all the rites and rituals they find necessary. Good luck with that. I really mean good luck, but you know what I'm saying. It's, I don't understand why anyone would go that route, but people do go that route. Halloween is not and was never intended as a satanic time of celebrating evil or anything that has anything to do with Satan or satanic rituals and so on. It was never that. But again, there are people all around the world, and they'll take something that's really good and really wonderful and they'll turn it into something that's really bad. And we can't do anything about that. We, should I say me, myself, my family, and in fact all of my friends, all the people that I know, we take Halloween a little bit with a pinch of salt. We do the trick-or-treating, which I think again comes back to England, and in pagan times people would give gifts, and the trick-or-treating started out as people giving gifts or leaving gifts in graveyards, on gravestones, or maybe in churches and so on. They'd leave small gifts because they felt, and again it all boils down to those people, and many unfortunately in the religious communities, who stir up and create nonsense, and people's imaginations get out of hand and so on, and people get scared and get spooked about this stuff. But they used to leave gifts in order to placate any restless spirits. They would leave gifts to placate mischievous spirits, poltergeists and so on. They would use these gifts, and sort of over the years and over time, that has now become the trick-or-treat thing. So no, Halloween is not a satanic holiday, but like everything else, those who are involved in evil will use wherever and whatever they can to further their cause, just as those of us who are involved in all that good stuff and love and light and so on, we will use our methods for as much as we can for the good and for the light. Let's have our next question. It's very hard to turn my head in this silly hat, which is actually, as I'm looking at it, it's sort of tipping slightly, so might actually at some point tip off my head. All right, let's have our next question, please. This is ridiculous. Go ahead.
This is from Ellie on Facebook. It could be related to the Day of the Dead and Halloween. She said, yesterday I saw an article about a boy emerging from a coma. He spoke only Spanish instead of his native English. Sometimes people awaken speaking other languages than their own, or awaking as a concert pianist. Any idea what happens?
Well, I do, and I think this is, and thank you, who wrote this, who sent this in? Ellie. Thank you, Ellie, for your question. Great question. I think this is a whole topic. because it relates really to rescue work, and rescue work is a whole topic, but I'm going to touch on it a little bit here because, you know, people, again, you know, they see someone who's maybe in a coma, and they speak in different languages or what have you, and it's actually more common than you would think it is. um, I know that I have done this on many occasions. Yes, I know it sounds weird, but I have done a lot of rescue work in my time as a spiritual medium, and rescue work is where we help to we help to help those in the spirit world who are afraid, who for whatever reason they're stuck. It that doesn't happen too often, but some people get stuck, some people get nervous, and you know, so I, as a medium, have literally, simply put, stepped out of my body. So I step out of my body, move out, and allow someone else to move in. And one of the most traumatic and memorable experiences for me was with a woman who was buried alive. And this does come back to Halloween, because I think she was buried alive because she was considered to be a witch. And what they used to do years ago was they'd you know, put you in a coffin, or they'd dig a big hole and they'd put big stones on the top of you while you were still alive, and they would bury you alive. This woman that I had an experience with was buried alive, and she was reliving what she went through, and she was reliving what she went through using my body. Yes, it sounds very weird, but it does happen. And as I stood and as she was using my body, I was able to see and to feel also, and to go through the same traumas and the same difficulties that she went through. Rescue work is not something that people take on lightly, and you have to have a very strong constitution, and you have to be aware all the time that you're there to help that person, not to be horrified by what they're going through. But, you know, many people through the ages, through the centuries, have died in awful and very traumatic situations. And sometimes because those situations are so traumatic, they do need help with a medium, or with the mediums group. They need help to process what happened to them, come to terms with it, come to terms with that they are now safe. This is the thing, because some people die in such absolute terror that they feel, then, you know, they have a hard time understanding that they're now safe, and then they can move forward to the light. So rescuing someone is helping that person to move forward to the light, and to, you know, to sort of get over the horror of what happened to them. And in most cases of rescue work that I've been involved in, and I can only talk about what I've been involved in most cases that I've been involved in, that person has gone through that terror, but we've helped them to overcome the terror. And we've helped them to overcome the terror. They live through it all over again. They go through the experience of dying all over again. They live through the terror again in order to understand it and to come to terms with it. So it's not particularly great for the medium, as in me in this case, not particularly great for us, because what we see can be awful, can be horrifying that someone else had to go through this, but at the same time being able to help someone to understand, okay, this has happened, but you're safe now, you're okay now, and it's time to move forward. That's you know, that's the wonderful part of rescue work. And there are mediums, very few and far between, there are mediums who dedicate their lives to doing just this, but it's very harrowing and it's very tiring. And I would suggest, if anyone out there is listening and wants to have a go at this, please don't, because it's not something that you take lightly by any means. Let's have our next question. I'm sitting with this thing, stupid hat. Shall I take this thing off now, because I'm now getting hot and there, let's do the hair thing now. I've got flat hair. How's that hair looking?
Oh,
Not
not
working.
There you go. Yeah.
It's like, all right, I couldn't take it any longer. Sorry, guys. I'm sort of getting hot and bothered here. Okay, right. I'll keep the jacket on though. All right.
Your friend Chris says, "Hi, Rosemary."
Oh,
Yes.
I have lots of friends.
Chris.
Is this Chris from Vermont?
Yes,
Chris,
it is.
hello. Hi, Chris from Vermont. Is she calling live?
Yes, she is. And she said, "Remember when Builder Bob said he looked for your broom in the corner?"
Yes, we had a patient, my darling Bob, who was a patient of ours. He had a brain tumor, and he had had many surgeries, but he decided at some point that he didn't want to go through any more surgeries. And so, you know, as a last resort, which often happens in the healing world, as a last resort, Bob came to us and you know, asked for help. But he didn't believe in anything. He certainly didn't believe in me. He was pretty much dragged there by friends and family, I have to say. And as I say, the only reason he came was because he had nowhere else to go. But when he walked into our healing center, it was quite funny because you could see him sort of looking around everywhere, and he was a bit, you know, a bit nervous, as you might expect. He looked perfectly well and healthy. He behaved as a perfectly well and healthy guy, even though he'd had, you know, 2 or 3 surgeries on his head. He was, you know, although he was in the final stages, he was still, you know, quite, you know, everything fine. He was a very funny guy. He was a lovely guy. And he told me later that, you know, when he first walked in, he really was thinking that I was some kind of a witch. We now know that that is a compliment, but I don't think he meant it as a compliment. He told me that he was sort of looking for the broom in the corner of the room. Now, we were supposed to get the broom out and we forgot about it. So maybe, you know, maybe next week I'll point to the broom in the room. So thanks for that, Chris. Let's have our next question. By the way, before I finish that story, our darling Bob, we did lose him, but he became one of our most ardent fans. And I'm saying my team and I, because my team and I took turns to help him with this situation. And when he finally passed, because of all the wonderful experiences that he'd had with me, and you can read about this. I can't remember which book it's in, but you can read about this in one of the books because it's actually a great story about how the nurse came in the morning. We were in the hospital, and how the nurse came in the morning and found me in bed with Bob while his wife was lying on the sofa behind the curtains. Yes, I know, it's a very weird, funny story, but yes. But he did pass, and I've seen him a few times. And we do have, and again, if I'd have known we were talking about Bob, we do have the most wonderful CD, and the CD is called A Conversation with Bob. And I go with Bob to a studio. He says to me on the way, "Where's my script?" And I say, "There isn't one. We're going to just do this off the cuff." And as I was listening to it one day, just before we sort of gave the final nod that it was all okay, I was listening to in the car. And my daughter hates to hear my voice. She hates to hear me when I'm doing my meditations because she rolls her eyes and raises her eyebrows and all of that stuff. And so I said to her, "I'm sorry, but you're going to have to listen to this," because this was the only time I had to listen to this before we actually went into production with it. And so we listened to it on the way from Vermont to New York, actually. And she didn't say a word until the end. And then at the end, I looked at her and I thought, am I going to get some weird comments here? And she said, "You know, Mum, that was like listening to the very best NPR interview." So if you want that conversation with Bob, because we give it out to hospitals and we give it out to, you know, to people who are sick. But if you want it, you have to pay for it. And please email us. It's called A Conversation with Bob, and it's really, really great. And you'll hear Bob talking about his illness, about his cancer, and about he handled it, which is unbelievable. It's lovely. And I'm just the interviewer asking the questions. So let's have our next question, shall we?
Next question is from Elise from Wyoming.
Okay, I'm sort of playing with my hair still there. Yep.
What are your beliefs on witches?
Well, okay. What are my beliefs on witches? I think we've talked about it. The witch that I knew, that she considered herself a white witch. She was lovely. I have no issue. I have no problem. You can call yourself whatever you like. I've got absolutely no problem with any of it. I mean, it's, whatever you want to be, as long as, you don't do harm to others, as long as you are, are a nice person, as long as if you're a witch, you're going to, I don't know what you do as a witch, but you're going to use whatever that is that you do use, your herbs, your special treatments for health and well-being, those sorts of things. If you're going to use it for good, I'm happy with it. I don't care what you call yourself. I call myself a medium. All of a sudden this, people started using this word. I was on the Larry King show, the first medium actually, I think, in this country certainly to be on the Larry King show. And that was my first international debut, but national in this country, in America. All of a sudden, all those people before called themselves fortune tellers or clairvoyants or whatever they call themselves, now everybody wants to use the word medium. Go ahead, knock yourself out. Whatever it means to you, it's fine. It means that to you. And whatever it means to me, it might be different than what it means to you. But if you want to use whatever words, witch, warlock, whatever you want to use, it's fine. As long as, please, be kind, do good. Be a nice person. Let's have our next, shall we? Do we have another question? Let's have another question then.
Okay, right along the Halloween theme. Audrey asks, what is the creepiest thing that's ever happened while you were alone?
Oh God, I can't remember, can't think. Do we have anything? Did I say I was going to talk about anything creepy? Creepy. What have we got down there? Let's see. Do we have anything?
You were going to tell the story about the man that was
decapitated. I have so many creepy stories. All right. Well, actually, it was a woman who was decapitated. And again, it was through a rescue. I was doing rescue work, and this woman was brought to us. She was actually apparently driving in her car, and a truck came out, and it had something on the back of the truck, pipes or steel or something, slipped off, went through her window. And what she remembers, she doesn't actually remember the pain of it. She doesn't remember, quite, how it happened. What she remembers mostly was sort of sitting there and looking at her head, which was actually on the seat next to her. Now that's weird. That's sort of creepy. And we were able to help her, and we were able to talk her through that, because she just could not get over the horror of that one moment. Another creepy. Okay, I'll tell you a creepy story. So one night I was in bed, this is many years ago, I was in bed, and I was sort of just about nodding off nicely, and I heard a noise, and I sat up and looked around and thinking, what is it? And I was just getting involved in this stuff, and I have to tell you, I was a bit nervous about it, because at that time I was having to deal with, the fact that there is evil in this world and that there are evil people in this world. So I was a bit on edge, a bit nervous, and I used to not be able to sleep well at all. So nothing, no noise, it was fine. I put my head back down on the pillow, and then as I sort of just about to close my eyes, I heard this sort of sliding noise, and it sounded like the door, my bedroom door, sliding open on the carpet. And so I opened one eye, very nervous, and sure enough, the door had opened, and behind, and then sort of standing in the doorway was this man. So many creepy stories, and I wasn't going to tell you this one, but anyway, there you are. It's come into my mind. So standing there is this man. He's just standing there looking at me, and behind him there's this really bright light. And I just looked at him, and my heart was beating in my chest, and I was absolutely terrified. And I said, "Who are you? What do you want?" And he disappeared. He stood there for a few more minutes and disappeared. Well, the next day I told my friends, and I was able to describe this man in incredible detail. I saw him in incredible detail. But somehow my bedroom door had slid open, and somehow this man stood in the doorway, and I've no idea how it happened. But anyway, I described him, and a friend of mine said, we need to watch out for him, because somehow or another, perhaps this is someone who's you've been shown this man. Well, sure enough, about 3 months later, I had a client who came knocking at the door, and I opened the door, and he stood in the doorway, and it was the exact same man. And don't ask me how, I don't know. Maybe in his sleep state he left his body, or maybe someone helped him to come to me to show me that this man was going to be important in my life, and he did turn out to be important in my life. But it was extremely creepy. Another creepy story, which I was going to tell you, but then I got sidetracked, was I woke up in the middle of the night one night, and my daughter was a teenager at the time, and she would leave empty ice cream tubs under the bed, and I found old banana skins under the bed, that sort of thing. She was not particularly then a tidy girl, but she is now. And so she would always leave stuff on the floor and so on. So I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was sort of talking to Grail, and I was talking to the spirit world, and I said, if you just give me a sign here that I'm on the right track. You've all said that, right? If you give me a sign that I'm on the right track, that would be really, really helpful to me. And the next thing, I hear this weird sound coming from my daughter's bedroom. I leap out of bed and I run to her bedroom. She's in bed and she's sound asleep, totally sound asleep. And lying on the floor is her hairdryer, still plugged into the wall, but it wasn't going moments before, and it was going full blast. Now, she was in bed asleep. We had no cats or dogs at the time. It couldn't have been turned on accidentally. And coincidentally, I just said, just give me a sign. So there are all sorts of things that happen to all of us, and I'm sure that all of you listening have your own sort of creepy stories that that you might want to impart to us. So please feel free, write us about your creepy stories or your unusual stories, and from time to time I'll talk about them if you give me permission to do it. All right, do we have another question?
Get a couple of funny questions if you're up to it.
Oh, well, I have the worst British sense of humor. So you can stand my sense of humor. I'm up to any weird question or funny question that you want to throw at me.
You kind of touched on this, but Jolene, she's live, she's watching, and she asks, what does Grey Eagle think about Halloween, and what is he going to dress up as?
Oh, we just did that a few minutes ago. Jolene, is it? Jolene. Hi, Jolene. Thank you for joining us. I think he might dress up in his headdress. He's laughing at me as I'm saying this. What does he think of Halloween? He thinks the way that I do. If you could see my 3-year-old grandson, I had a preview of him in his costume the other night. Because we talk every night, we FaceTime every single day, which is really nice. So I get to see him every day and get to talk to him every day. So he gave me a preview, and he's got this Batman thing, and he's hysterical. And I'm going as the witch. But I don't know if any of you have ever seen, there's a wonderful cartoon, and it's called Room on the Broom. And it's for little kids, but I watched it and I love it too. And it's about a witch, and she's obviously, even though she's wearing a black hat, she's a good witch. And she has a cat and she flies around on her broom. But then she's asked if she can share her broom with other creatures. Go watch it. So my grandson loves Room on the Broom. So I am going for Halloween as the Room on the Broom witch. She doesn't have a name. She's just the witch on the Room on the Broom. So I'm going as Mosey, which is what my grandson calls me. I'm going as Mosey the witch, just like Room on the Broom. So we just have fun with it. We like it. And Greg, as long as I'm having fun. And again, if you're kind, if you're nice, if you're a good person, go ahead, have fun. Try not to get too sloshed, though, like Dean might be going to do. Yes.
We've got Hubert from the Netherlands. And he's
Hello,
asking,
Hubert.
Yeah, he's watching live.
Hello, Hubert from the Netherlands. Thank you for joining us. Yes, what can we do for you?
He's wondering if you know about Joseph Roelof's books. Have you heard of him?
I have, and in fact, a client sent me a book, but I haven't read it, so I don't know much about it at all. But if you'd like to, Hubert, send us some stuff, some information, just send us a link to where we can find information on him. I'd love to do that. Does he say why he's asking that? So just send me the link. If you can send us an email, send me the link and I'll check it out. I will, I promise. At some point I'll check it out. But thank you for joining us. I hope you're enjoying this Halloween spooky show. By the way, do I believe in ghosts? No, I do not. Do I believe in evil? Absolutely. Do I believe in witches, warlocks, and do I celebrate the Day of the Dead? Yes, and I think there's a third yes in there somewhere. But again, do I let it harm me or affect me? No, I don't, because I try to keep the light and the goodness around me. So if any of you are out there and nervous or afraid of what evil might do or what that dark side might do, always keep in mind, as long as you stay in the light and keep to the light and ask for God's help and protection to stay in the light, you're going to be fine. Nothing can get you if you stay in the light. All right. Next question.
Got a two-part personal question, and they're kind of just funny questions.
All right.
Okay. Your favorite scary book or scary author?
Oh, that's easy. That is such a no-brainer. Years and years and years ago, I was on holiday in Cyprus, and I rented this house, and they had books in the house, and I pulled out a book, one of the books. I'd never heard of the author at all. I pulled out one of the books to take with me to the beach. I thought, well, this looks good. It looks interesting. I took it to the beach and could not put it down. I was so creeped out. That book, my first ever book, my first ever real horror story, actually. And of course, the greatest of horror story writers, Stephen King, who everybody thinks he's a horror writer, but I actually think that he's one of the great writers of our time. If you want to take time to read his books, the way he uses his words and the way he uses his descriptions. If I could write half as well as he, I would be thrilled to bits. Stephen King is one of my favorites, if not my favorite horror story writer. And that book was called, some of you have guessed, The Pet Cemetery. So scary, so good, so well written. And thanks to Stephen King, because he's given me hours and hours and hours over the years of fabulous enjoyment. Yes. And the second part of this question, yes.
Whilst watching scary movies,
Uh-oh.
Are you the person who yells at the characters, run, run? The person with their eyes covered the whole time? Or the person who falls asleep?
Well, all of the above. It depends. If it's a
scary
movie. If it's a, are we talking seriously scary? So it's a really good. So if it's a really good, really scary movie, I tend not to watch too many, because it was really, really good. I'll wake up in the night, having sort of palpitations and nightmares and so on. I know enough about that scary stuff. I don't necessarily want to be reminded of it. But there are some movies that are so, what I call subtly good. They're subtle horror movies. They're not in your face stuff. I don't like the movies where they, you know, get the axe out and chop people to pieces. I like to be, you know, scared in a much more subtle way. I'm the person though who in most movies you'd hate to be with me watching a movie, especially if we're watching a movie at home. I'm the one who has to keep my mouth shut, and I don't always do it. Who says, oh, he's the killer, or yeah, she's the one, or I'm that person who can always sort of see, and it's not because I'm psychic, I think it's because, you know, it's just about intuition. I always seem to know, perhaps just before it happens, what's going to happen. I'm rarely surprised, but occasionally I'm surprised by the ending of a movie or by the villain, but I'm rarely surprised. I don't shout at the screen, run, run, run. There are times when I've actually hidden, oh my God, I can't watch this, and then I'm peeking through my fingers. So that's me at the movies, at a good horror movie.
Well, we'll stick one more funny question in there.
Go ahead then. Let's have that one more funny question. It is, after all, Halloween.
Okay, you're starring in a horror movie. Yes, you're starring.
All right, I'm starring in a horror movie, yeah. Okay.
Are you the final girl, the first to die, the comic relief, the skeptic, the smart one, or the killer?
Smart one. I've got to say I'm the smart one. Listen to me. If I'm going to be in a horror movie, I'm not going to be the first to die. Why would I do that? I could be the murderer. It depends, because I've sort of got a weird mind. But usually I probably would be the smart one who sort of faces the killer at the end and vanquishes. I'm the hero. Hey, I'm in the horror movie and I am the hero who saves almost everybody, not everybody, but I save almost everybody from dying. How about that? That would be my that would be my role. That's a funny. Who said that question? That's a very funny question. Very weird. All right. Do we have any more questions? This is it for Halloween. Right. Did we have a personal question, or did we do? We sort of did the personal question. All right. So the personal question was, which role would I play in a horror movie? All right. So, all right. We have the competition, which is going to start next week, and I think we're putting out a little video on Wednesday. Do we have the date for that one?
November 2nd.
So November 2nd, there's going to be a little video with our first question, which I'm not allowed to give you today, apparently. Carolyn's completely in charge of this competition. So I can't give you the first question, but it's fun. We have some fun questions. All right. So look on Facebook, Twitter, Meetup, YouTube for the question. And remember that, every right answer, let me get this right, every right answer every week will go into a big sack. So even if you don't win next week's competition, you still have a chance to go ahead. If you sent in the right question, you still have a chance to go ahead and win the big prize. The big prize, of course, as you all should know, is me. You have to, in order to participate in this competition, you have to subscribe to YouTube. So please, subscribe. And so that's the competition. It starts next week. If you need any information about us, if you want to put in a question, we're so inundated with next week's topic, which is power symbols. I cannot believe, thank you so much to all of you who've sent in your questions already for next week, believe it or not. we are inundated, and people are telling us all sorts of things about their power symbols. So we're going to be talking about power symbols next week. That's going to be our subject next week. If you want to pose a question.
Nope. Next week's video is pre-recorded.
You know what? You're right.
Yeah.
Sorry. Next week's question is pre-recorded.
We've already got
next week I will be in the hospital with my daughter. So we're going to pre-record after this show. We're going to pre-record. So we're taking all the questions that we already have. So yes, it's too late for you to send in a question for next week's video, but keep watching anyway. And next week we'll tell you what our topic is for the following week, of course. So if you need any more information, if you want to get in touch with us for any reason, you need to email us, rosemary@rosemaryaltea.com. If you want to go to our website, it is www.rosemaryaltea.com. Check us out on Facebook and on Twitter. Thank you. Thank you for watching. Have a fabulous Halloween. Have fun. Enjoy.
Quick public service announcement.
Quick public service announcement. Quick. What is it?
If 13, 14, and 15-year-olds come to your house for candy, give it to them. At least they're trick-or-treating and not being hoodlums.
Yeah, what? Did you get that? That's so funny. So please have a blessed day.